The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Empathy, sympathy, or depravity. Did any of these motivate Michael Jackson to seek out a relationship with Macaulay Culkin? Now, while those questions might be better put to the King of Pop himself, it was Macaulay Culkin who was cast in a very unfamiliar role when he took the stand to defend his longtime pal. Hello, I'm James Curtis, and welcome to E's coverage of the Michael Jackson trial. Looking all grown up, Macaulay Culkin paused at security and did what every modern young male feels compelled to do: check his cell phone. Will Culkin's performance save Jackson, or was it just another Hollywood cameo? You judge for yourself. Here's how it all began, according to the courtroom transcripts.
Good morning, Mr. Culkin.
Good morning.
You are an actor from New York, right?
That is correct.
Would you please summarize your career?
Summarize my career?
Yes, please.
I started working at the age of 4 doing stage and things like that, and done a number of things, films, things like that. Kind of worked till I was about 14, took a break there for a while, and just started working again recently.
Do you know the fellow seated at council table to my right?
Yes, I do.
Who is that?
That's Michael Jackson.
Is he a friend of yours?
Yes, he is.
How long has he been a friend of yours?
I first met him when I was 9 or 10 years old.
And how did you meet him?
He kind of called me out of the blue one time, just said, "Hey, you know, this is Michael Jackson." And this is after the Home Alone movie had come out. So it's kind of like, it was like, I think I understand what's going to happen, and I'd just like to get together and talk.
And he is still your friend?
Yes, he is.
When did you last talk to him?
I talked to him about 3 days ago.
Now, back to the beginning.
And at some point, did you visit Neverland for the first time?
Yeah, it was after he had called that first time. He invited us, me and my family, over there to hang out.
And did you and your family go to Neverland?
Yes, we did.
Did you hang out?
Yes, we did.
How long did you hang out there with him?
I think the first trip we were there for about 3 or 4 days. It was me and my younger brother and my mother and my father.
How many times do you think you visited Neverland?
More than a dozen times, from basically when I was about 10 to when I was about 14 years old. And I kind of took a break there for a while and just didn't go. I just never found myself on the West Coast, so I never found myself going there. And then went a couple times between when I was 17 and now, and just a handful of times.
And when was the last time, do you think, you visited Neverland?
About a year or so ago.
Okay, and you maintained a friendship with Mr. Jackson all those years?
Yes, I have.
Okay, do you consider him a close friend of yours?
Yes.
Next, to coin a film term, defense lawyer Tom Mesereau cuts to the chase.
You're aware of the allegations in this case, correct?
Uh-huh, yes.
You heard about some of the allegations about whether or not Mr. Jackson improperly ever touched you, right?
Yes.
Did Mr. Jackson ever molest you?
Never.
Did Mr. Jackson ever improperly touch you?
Absolutely not.
Has Mr. Jackson ever touched you in any sexual type of way?
No.
Has he ever touched you in any offensive way?
No.
What do you think of these allegations?
I think that they're absolutely ridiculous.
When did you first learn that these prosecutors were claiming that you were improperly touched?
When did I first learn that?
Yes.
Somebody called me up and said, "You should probably check out CNN because they're saying something about you."
And did you check it out?
Yes, I did.
And what did you learn?
I learned that it was a former cook had done something to me, and there was something about a maid or something like that. It was just one of those things where I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that, first of all, these people were saying these things, or let alone that it was out there and people were thinking that kind of thing about me. And at the same time, it was amazing to me that that nobody approached me and even asked me whether or not these allegations were true. They kind of just threw it out there, just like they didn't even double check it, basically. I mean, even if they assumed that they knew the answer, what got me was they didn't even ask.
Now, are you saying these prosecutors never tried to reach you to ask you your position on this?
No, they didn't.
Now, Tom Mesereau moves on to Michael Jackson's bedroom.
Have you ever been to Michael Jackson's bedroom?
Yes.
And when did you first see Michael Jackson's bedroom?
I think it was probably the first trip.
And did you go in there with your family?
Uh-huh.
And what do you recall about Michael Jackson's room?
It was large. It was a very comfortable place. He had paintings and all those kind of things on the wall. It was, it had 2 bedrooms and it was 2 stories high. It was, it's not what you normally associate with a bedroom.
And have you and your family stayed in that room?
Yes.
How many times do you think?
Handful of times.
How many times do you think you've stayed in Michael's room?
A handful of times.
How about your sister?
Not as often.
How about your brother?
Whenever I was there, my little brother was kind of always tagging along with me, so he was usually anywhere I was.
Next, the section of Neverland where a former Jackson employee claimed to have seen inappropriate behavior.
Have you been to the arcade with Michael Jackson?
Yeah.
Do you recall playing any games with Michael Jackson in the arcade?
Yeah, sure.
And do you recall this going on any time of day?
Playing video games?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What time of day would you play video games with Mr. Jackson?
Anytime. Sometimes I fell asleep in the arcade and I'd wake up and just start playing. It was one of those kind of things where, you'd be up half the night. You'd be kind of in and out of all these places. So it was never really any kind of specific time that we spent there, but it was, kind of just, we were always kind of just either there or at the theater or just driving around in the golf carts or something like that.
Defense attorney Tom Mesrel now becomes a bit more methodical with his tour of Jackson's Neverland Ranch.
Do you recall your family being with you in the arcade?
Yes.
Do you recall them being with you in the zoo?
Yes.
Do you recall your family being with you in the theater?
Yeah.
Did you ever have any reason to think your family was being excluded by Mr. Jackson from anything you did at Neverland?
Could you repeat that?
Sure. Did you ever get the feeling that your family was being excluded from anything you did at Neverland?
Absolutely not.
As testimony continues, the whole world is your playground when you're the king of pop.
Okay. Have you ever traveled with Michael Jackson?
Yes.
Where'd you travel to?
We took a trip. I was going with some family friends. We were going to Bermuda, and I said, we're going. And he said, is it all right if I tag along? And I said, yes. So we did that. After that, we ended up we decided to fly back to Orlando because the family friends that I was traveling with, that's where they're from. So we went there, went to Disney World for a day or two, and ended up flying back with my family. And he was doing a charity event a couple years back in Washington, D.C., and so I hitched a ride with him on his plane back to New York.
And did Mr. Jackson ever do anything improper to you on any of these trips?
No.
Ever see him do anything that you found disturbing on any of these trips?
Absolutely not.
Has Mr. Jackson ever hugged you?
Sure.
Have you ever hugged him?
Absolutely.
Were you ever suspicious of any of these hugs as being something sexual in nature?
No, it was always very casual. It was just the way I hug any of my friends.
When we come back, how old is too old for sleepovers with a grown man? Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Film star Macaulay Culkin says nothing happened when he was home alone with Michael Jackson at Neverland. But during cross-examination, Assistant District Attorney Ron Zonin tries to clarify a few points with the young actor, but seems to run into a case of mistaken identity. Here's what the jurors heard according to the courtroom transcripts.
Sir, isn't it true that both in 1993 and in 2003, law enforcement attempted to gain access to you, to have an interview with you, and on both occasions, your representatives refused to allow you to have an interview with law enforcement? Isn't that true?
Not to my knowledge.
You're not aware of any effort by law enforcement either in 1993 or currently within the last couple of years to be able to get an interview with you?
Not that I know of, no.
Isn't it true that just within the last couple of weeks, your attorney notified us that you would not be giving an interview to either side of this case prior to your taking the witness stand and testifying?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Mr. Culkin, did you talk to anybody from the defense prior to coming into court today?
Did I talk to anybody from the defense?
That's right.
I talked to Tom Snedden yesterday.
You talked to Tom Snedden Yesterday?
Sorry, excuse me, Mr. Messer.
You talked to Mr. Mesereau yesterday?
Yes.
I'm the one with the short hair.
Yes, sorry about that. I went to his office yesterday for about half an hour to get my, figure out where I was staying and all that kind of stuff.
Did you give him an interview at that time?
No, not really. He kind of walked me through the procedure, what I would have to be going through for the day.
And did you talk to him about anything substantive, any of the issues about your association with Michael Jackson?
No, we didn't.
Next, as we've heard from some other witnesses, Michael Jackson is very generous with that gift that keeps on ticking.
Now, you invited Mr. Jackson or Mr. Jackson invited himself? Which was it?
To be honest, I don't remember. I think it was something like, I'm going to Bermuda, we're going to have a good time. I don't remember how exactly it went over, whether it was like, oh, is it all right if I come, or if it was, why don't you come along? I honestly don't remember.
Did Mr. Jackson travel with you to Bermuda, or did he meet you there?
I honestly don't remember.
When he got there, he gave you a watch, did he not?
I think that's when he gave me the watch.
It was a Rolex?
Yes.
He gave a Rolex to an 11-year-old child?
Yeah, but it wasn't anything all that crazy to me. I didn't see it as anything like that. I was not a person without means, so it wasn't anything was all that awe-inspiring. I mean, my father had a Rolex. It was that kind of thing.
Do you still have that Rolex watch?
I think I do have it somewhere, yeah.
You don't wear it any longer.
It doesn't fit.
It's a woman's watch, is that correct?
Not that I know of. It was small. It was a small watch, and the band is very small on it, so like I said, it doesn't really fit me anymore.
Now, Macaulay Culkin reveals more on the all-important sleeping arrangements at Neverland.
How often did you go to Neverland between the ages of 10 and 14?
How many times did I go there?
Yes.
A dozen times, maybe more.
All those occasions. Did you sleep in his room?
At some point or another, I think I might have ended up sleeping in his room. But I couldn't really say that I slept there every single time I was there or anything like that.
Would it be safe to say that 90% of the time you stayed there?
In his bedroom?
Yes.
I don't think it would be 90%. It would be...
80%?
It would be I slept in his room about as often as I fell asleep anywhere. Like, I fell asleep. I would flop down. We'd fall asleep in the movie theaters. He has beds in the movie theater. I'd flop down and fall asleep there. I've fallen asleep in the video game machines before. I mean, I would go and play there basically until I just run myself out. And I'd just flop down wherever I needed to.
And you'd be pretty exhausted and go fast asleep. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, that would happen. I'd wear myself out and fall asleep just like any kid would.
Next, was there ample time to commit a crime?
So the question that you answered about Mr. Jackson never molesting you, your answer more accurately is he never did while you were awake. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that?
Well, your answer to Mr. Mesereau's question about he never molested you.
Yes.
Your answer more accurately is he never molested you, to your knowledge, while you were awake. Is that true?
As far as I know, he's never molested me.
While you were asleep as a 9-year-old kid who would run himself ragged, you wouldn't know what happened while you were asleep, right?
I find that unlikely.
Well, but you just told us that sometimes you'd be so exhausted after a day of playing, you'd fall asleep on a machine.
Yeah, but I think I'd realize if something like that was happening to me.
So, were PJs in at MJ's?
So you would have no recollection at all of your visits to Neverland, of ever actually making arrangements to simply go to bed like anybody else, putting on pajamas and crawling into bed and turning out the light.
I never really wore pajamas. But at the same time, it was something like, occasionally, yeah, we'd have to wake up early in the morning because, for whatever reason, because we were going to be leaving in the morning or whatever. Sometimes I was put on a schedule.
Mr. Culkin, as a 9-year-old child, what did you wear to bed?
I wore my clothes.
You would just wear whatever you were wearing during the day?
Yeah.
Every single night?
Up until I was about 17 years old. That's when I kind of discovered what pajamas were.
So when did Macaulay Culkin finally hang out the Do Not Disturb sign at Neverland?
And you think when you first started coming to Neverland, you were 9 years old. That would have been 1989.
About 9 or 10 years old. So it's probably like 90, 91, it was after the Home Alone movie came out.
How old were you when you stopped sleeping in bed with Michael Jackson?
Well, like I said, I stopped going there just because I had never really found myself going to Los Angeles or anything like that. So I didn't really come back again until I was about 17.
The question was, when did you stop sleeping?
I know. I'm getting there. And so when I started coming back again, I found myself just not sleeping in bed. And I've always kind of fell asleep in the guest units ever since then.
Why didn't you stay with Mr. Jackson in his room?
Because I enjoyed my privacy a little bit more.
Assistant District Attorney Ron Zonin doesn't give up, though. He continues to grill Macaulay Culkin about bedtime and the opportunity for improper behavior.
How many nights did you spend with Michael Jackson alone in his room and in his bed between the ages of 9 and 14?
Could you repeat that?
How many nights do you believe you spent alone in Michael Jackson's room and in his bed, alone with Michael Jackson, between the ages of 9 and 14?
It couldn't have been more than it was like a handful of times. It couldn't have been more than 5 times, 4 times.
Sir, you told us it was a handful of times that before you went to Bermuda, and that was at age 10.
Altogether, like I said, I went a lot between the ages of about 10 and about 9 and 12, 9 and 11. And then I found I never really worked a whole lot in Los Angeles. It was only when I was in town that I would go over there. And I worked. I worked on 2 films out here one when I was 12, the other one when I was 11 or so, or 10. And those are the times that I would just go there. And occasionally I would have fallen asleep in his room.
When we return, how damaging is the King of Pop's porn collection to the defense case? Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Why is there such a special bond between Macaulay Culkin and Michael Jackson? And what was the foundation of their long-standing and quite close relationship? Here's what the young actor told the jurors according to the courtroom transcripts.
You said that Michael Jackson understood you. What did you mean?
Well, because of circumstances like with my career, one day I was essentially a normal kid who happened to be an actor. And the next thing I know, I'm just this thing where people are hiding in the bushes and trying to take your picture. And just people are kind of out to profit from you. Or next thing you know, you have a million acquaintances and no more friends anymore. It was like that. And he understood that. That was one of the first things we talked about was I get it. I understand what you're going through. I understand the same thing. If you want to talk about anything or if you ever want to, I could learn from his knowledge, basically, of where he came from. And you couldn't really find a whole lot of people, especially when you're 9 years old, put it in these circumstances that nobody else. You can't really talk to anybody about this kind of stuff, and he understood it. And it was a comforting thing.
Now, do you remember the Peter Pan story? I'm sure you do. Is Neverland really a place where no one ever grows up?
Did you ever see Mr. Jackson as very childlike himself?
He was very childlike, yes.
What do you mean?
He liked doing the things that we like to do. He liked playing the arcade games, though he wasn't as good as us usually, but, he still enjoyed doing it because, it's one of those things. And he enjoyed the same kind of movies. He liked running around. We used to play tag. It's that kind of thing. He played with us, the same kind of way I played with any of my friends my age.
Did Mr. Jackson and you ever discuss the problem of sort of missing out on your childhoods because of all the work and pressures of success?
It was one of those things that we talked about, yeah. It kind of just comes with the territory. Like I said, it's not really, it's not really a therapy kind of thing. It's just kind of more like occasionally we would just kind of talk about those kind of things, yes.
Macaulay Culkin says Michael Jackson enjoys games with kids, but Assistant District Attorney Ron Zonin wants to know if stashes of porn are really appropriate toys.
You said he was childlike. Are you referring to his behavior back when you were 10 and 11 years old?
Yeah, I mean, even now, he's more of a father now. It's kind of fun for me to see that, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, he still has kid-like qualities.
Do you believe that his possession of a great deal of sexually explicit material is consistent with him being childlike?
How do you mean?
Him possessing a lot of magazines that are very sexually explicit.
It depends what you are talking about. I mean, when I was 12 or 13 years old, I had a couple Playboys under my bed.
How about magazines that depict men and women engaged in sex acts? Magazines with men and men engaged in sex acts?
What about them?
Magazines of women inserting things inside of them. Would you believe that possession of those kinds of magazines, and a number of them, would it be consistent with or inconsistent with his being childlike?
Well, I don't think that there's anything wrong with having those things, whether you're childlike or not. I mean, overall, he's still a human being, and it's something that human beings possess. And so I don't really necessarily find that inappropriate, but yeah, I don't find it inappropriate.
But it's surprising to you that he would be in possession of all that. Is that right?
Not necessarily, no.
So, Macaulay Culkin remains loyal to his friend and mentor, but there's a lot more courtroom drama still ahead. As the defense continues, will 12 jurors be dazzled by star power, or will the substance of the defense case carry the day for Michael Jackson? You don't want to miss a crucial moment of the courtroom action. Be sure to join me and our panel of legal experts tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. for the exclusive coverage of the Michael Jackson trial. Where can you catch it? Only on E!